This time last year was being speculated about whether he or Josh Dacos were going to be taken as the number one draft pick. It was Jason that was taken by the North Melbourne Footy Club with, I would imagine, almost universal recruiters suggesting that he was the best or second best player in that draft. He's had a year at the North Footy Club that have had their own issues, had a coach that's left them halfway through the year and now have some uncertainty around their new coach, and he's elected to return. Well, not elected, but asked to be traded back to the Port Adelaide Footy Club. They've agreed. And now he finds himself in the colours worn by his stepfather, Fabian Francis. So it's a big story, and Ben Williams is the man that has to drive the futures of these young talents, and I reckon would have had a pretty steep learning curve on the back of what's taken place with Jason. He's been good enough to take our call. How are you, Ben?
I'm well, Garry. How are you?
Going well. This has been an interesting case study in drafting and pressures that are on young men and the scrutiny and how they deal with it. What's the mindset right now or state of mind of Jason?
Yeah, he's very relieved and very happy. Obviously, it's been well reported that it's been a pretty turbulent year for him and North Melbourne, and obviously decided that he wanted to come home. And once we got the trade done, obviously he's quite happy and relieved, and obviously training and working hard already to try to make a better year for him in 2023.
Ben, it's Sam Edmund here. Well done and congrats, I suppose, has to be said, on getting your player to ultimately where he wanted to go. Just at North Melbourne, are we right to suggest that he never really settled at the club?
Yeah, it was pretty hard for him, obviously. Moving away interstate for the first time as an 18-year-old, that's tough for all the kids, but he's obviously arrived at the club when they weren't probably, they were going through quite a lot of things, and obviously with everything that happened with David Noble, and obviously Jace had a lot of steep learning curves throughout the year, and dealing with what was happening at the club and what was happening with him. So, it was very hard for him to settle, yes.
And he acknowledged himself yesterday that, he put his hand up and said there were things that he could have done better in his debut season. I suppose his sense of frustration at the club throughout the year that he perhaps struggled to conceal at times. Can you let us in a bit to that?
Yeah, he's obviously an emotive guy and a very intense guy and wants the best out of himself and wants the best out of the environment that he's in. So he obviously doesn't really hide his emotions, and he lets it all go, and he obviously did that a couple of times throughout the year. And so he's obviously got to work on that, and he says that. But as he said yesterday himself, he's a 19-year-old player, and he's got a lot to learn, and I had a lot to learn when I was a 19-year-old as well. So he's trying to make himself be better, and obviously wants to be a better footballer and contribute to Port Adelaide for them having some success and him having some success as well.
And normally in these situations, I suppose the player and you as the manager would inform the coach, or at least sit down in front of the coach to say, I would like to be traded. How did it play out, given, I guess, the unique situation that envelops Alistair Clarkson at the moment?
Yeah, obviously Clarko's having a bit of time away from the club, so we've just been dealing exclusively with Brady Rawlings, who's obviously had a lot to do this last couple of weeks. So, we've been just chatting with him and obviously informed him of Jason's intentions.
And I know it's a hypothetical, but if Alistair Clarkson was full bottle and the situation hadn't arisen that has in the past month or two, and he was, driving this, he will. November 1 is when he takes over, but we know that he was going to take over. Would it have been a different scenario?
Oh, potentially. Obviously, we're not in that situation, so we had to make decisions on the facts that we have at hand. So potentially that could be the case. But, he's obviously been home now for a good month and had all the support and everyone around him and his family. And, just decided that from what he's gone through and where he's at, he just wants to stay in Adelaide and play football in Adelaide going forward.
So, Ben, what do you say to people who, they're an emotive bunch, football supporters, there's real tribalism at stake? I guess the North Melbourne supporters and maybe some others who say, come on, you've been there for 5 minutes, you're in contract, stick it out, the wheel will turn. What would you say to those people?
You can get people's frustration, Sam, but also this is a job for these guys, and people forget that. Like, obviously, and it's a job for such a short period of time if you look at their life in its entirety. So, if he's one of the lucky ones who has a 12 or 15-year career, that's obviously very long in football terms, but in context of someone's life, it's a short period of time. So ultimately, you and Garry and myself and Jace, we all have to be happy in our workplace. And the happier we are, traditionally, we usually do a bit better. So he's obviously taken stock and had a look at himself and had a look where he was working and decides that he wants to work somewhere else.
And obviously the club put its hand up and say, it hasn't exactly been a picture of serenity at Arden Street this year. We all acknowledge that. But does he put his hand up as well, in the professionalism stakes as well, Ben, and all the things that, as you say, he's learning on the fly. He's 19 years of age at the end of the day, but things that he needs to improve on, not just on the field but off it as well?
Yeah, of course. Like, obviously, this year was the first year he was a full-time footballer. Before that, he was an amateur footballer. So it's been a steep learning curve for him. And he realises that he's had to be more professional and, obviously hide his emotions a bit better. And that's obviously something that he'll continue to work on.
It doesn't seem to have knocked his confidence around, though. I watched, he looked happy. He was in the Port Adelaide shirt, got up and spoke in front of the press and said that he still hopes to one day be the best player in the competition. I mean, that gives you a bit of an insight into his state of mind.
Yeah, he's obviously very ambitious, and his whole life he's usually been the best player in his teams and growing up. So that was obviously frustrating this year for him, going out and playing and not being able to turn the game on its head just by himself. So yeah, he wants to, what he thinks being the best environment where he can obviously reach his potential and hopefully become the best player in the comp, as he says.
Ben, you and your management company, Players Inc., obviously also look after Sam Wiedemann. Do you expect him to be at Essendon by 7:30 tonight?
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of goodwill between the clubs. Originally, it was obviously a conversation between Essendon and Melbourne, but Sydney are potentially involved in this one now. So I've had conversations with all three clubs last night, and they're all speaking fairly positively, but yeah, there's still a little bit more that has to give today for that to happen, I think.
How my ears I've missed most of this stuff, Ben. I go to bed early. How has Sydney got involved in all of this?
They're trying to get Aaron Francis out of Edmund and Garry, Yeah, I think sometimes, as you know, when it can't be just a straight two-way deal, you need a third party to give a bit and take a bit to make everyone happy.
Sure.
And Benny, just before we let you go, it is a silly season. You'd be well aware of that, and rumours can start and have no fact to them whatsoever. Josh Bruce is one that's come up a few times, and I'm not sure if it's Dot joining at the Bulldogs given everything they've got going on, but will he be remaining at the Whitten Oval?
Yeah, and Josh is committed to obviously playing at the Dogs. He's got another year to go on his contract and had a great year in 2021 until he did his ACL, and obviously the aim was just for him to come back and play a little bit of football in 2022, which he did. But I know Josh is training really hard at the moment and looking to make a big impact there. And I think he'll have a chat with Bevo. He might either play in defence or up forward. So yeah, that remains to be seen.
And just a quick one, the 6-year deal for Jason at Port Adelaide, was that your suggestion? Was it theirs? How did we arrive at 6 years?
Everyone was very open, Garry, about, where Jace fits in and where he's going. So we suggested it to them and they were happy to reciprocate. And, they obviously see his potential and know he's a good person and a good player, so they're backing him in. And after all, he's only going to be 25 when that finishes, and he won't even be a free agent then too. So, yeah, there's still a lot of blue sky there with Jace's career.
Well, good luck. The job of the manager is to look after the player, and you've done that. You've got him back home and with a 6-year contract, and now it's head down, bum up, earn the respect, and hopefully play the sort of footy that we all know he can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Good on you. Ben Williams, the manager of Jason Horne-Francis, joining us. That's his job, and from a management point of view, and I want you're going to give us your top 3 draft winners so far, then he gets massive ticks as a manager. That he's got Jason Horne-Francis, and all of the messages that are coming through, and as you can appreciate, there's, and I get it, people are salty and they're this and they're that, and they've got thoughts on the manager. The manager works for the player in this instance, and Jason Horne-Francis is back in Adelaide. and he's got 6-year deal, a 6-year contract with the Port Adelaide Footy Club, a team that should be contending and hoping to play finals. He gets massive ticks.
Can't add anything to that. And if he gave Jason Horne-Francis the choice about where he wanted to play his football when he was 17, before he was drafted, he probably would have said right here in Adelaide. So the conspiracy theorists might say it was always going to go this way, Gary, but who knows?
No, I'm not sure. I don't believe that, but it has.